Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. It's Pride! Magic Presents Pride is a casual commander event Wizards has brought back this June. You build a commander deck, treating every eligible commander as though it has the partner keyword, because Magic is for everyone. Then you show up at your local game store and play Commander, hopefully against other Pride decks. This year, participants are supposed to receive this sweet foil Gilded Lotus promo, as well as an enamel pin of that lotus. Local game stores can schedule Pride events for June 5th through 14th in these select regions, so check with your local game store to see if they're running one. And if they aren't, ask them to. The event is early in the month this year, so plan accordingly, but you can still play your Pride deck as a Rule 0 deck anytime. Just ask your pod and shuffle up. This event was how I launched my channel last year, so my Monday deck techs during June will all be Pride decks. Anyway, let's get to it. As you see, today our commanders are Brenard, Ginger Sculptor, and Ygra, Eater of All. Between these two cards, we have nearly all of our colors. Sorry, Red, maybe next week. I'm not saying that the story of a careful chef and his ravenous cat are a reference to anything. Absolutely not that. It's more that our pets love us no matter who we are. As long as we take care of them, they'll take care of us. Makes sense to me. I'm excited to show you what I put together for this pair, but before we get started, let's talk about our deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander, or in this case, commanders. I want to show off why they're such cool cards and why I put them at the head of my deck. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commanders ask of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 Wraths, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play Commander. So let's talk about our commanders. Brenard, Ginger Sculptor is a 3/3 legendary human artificer for 1, a green, a white, and a blue, so 1 and Bant mana. That says each creature you control that's a food or a golem gets +2/+2 and has trample. And whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. And if you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature except it's a 1/1 food golem artifact creature in addition to its other types and has the food text of pay 2, tap, and sacrifice this token to gain 3 life. Meanwhile, Ygra, Eater of All, is 3, a black and a green, for a 6/6 legendary elemental cat with Ward, Sacrifice of Food. So our opponents have to have food in order to not have Ward counter their speller ability targeting Ygra, which we can give them, because Ygra says other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have the food text. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice this permanent, and you gain 3 life. So that's all creatures, including our own and all of our opponents. Every creature on the board except for Ygra themselves. And whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 1/1 counters on Ygra. Ygra is a pretty popular commander. Wow, currently top 50 on EDHREC? Wow. And it's no wonder. Its middle ability is rad. Players love type-changing effects. Check this video's description for a link to my Toph the First Metalbender deck for an example of that. But Ygra's ability is particularly cool because it affects our opponent's creatures as well. With our cat commander in play, every other creature gains a built-in sacrifice outlet and a source of life gain, complicating combat math and serving to tempt players with their creature's newly added utility. And whether they give in to that temptation and crack their creatures for life gain, or those creatures die in other ways, Ygra feasts. But Brenard knows cat food isn't cheap, so he's got a plan for keeping his cupboard stocked. Ygra grows when our creatures go to the graveyard too, and Brenard gives us a chance to exile them from the yard in order to bring them back. Albeit differently. Smaller, perhaps, but still strong thanks to Brenard's first ability, pumping them up. That's what's so cool about this synergy. Ygra makes our creatures into food, which means they all receive this +2/+2 and trample from Brenard even before they die and come back as a token food golem version of themselves. Everything on the table is a treat. And we enjoy them as such. Turning creatures into foods means making them into artifacts, and we have artifact synergies galore for that reason. Affinity and Cranial plating effects, artifact fall and sacrifice outlets, and even some cards that care specifically about foods or the life we gain from them. Having 2 commanders that cost 9 mana between them in 4 different colors isn't easy, but we've got lots of ramp and fixing to get ourselves on curve and keep ourselves there. Adding blue into a classic Abzan food list gives us all manner of unexpected cards and effects, and our deck folds them all together into a delicious concoction in our mixing bowl. We pipe out our value pieces carefully, arranging each creature an inch apart on our playmat, and once our board state is properly preheated, our expert baker watches through the window as they all puff up. We feed a few to our hungry helper and let it run wild on our opponents while we make our cookie creatures into true ginger brutes. Yes, good. They follow our feline fighter into the fray, and when they fall, Brenard brings them back as a second helping of just desserts. Soon enough, our opponent's armies are shredded, crushed, and soon to be consumed. They can almost hear their creatures' cardboard and cookie cries, "Not my buttons! Not my Gumdrop buttons!" You'll enjoy this deck if you like broad synergies that lead to fun and surprising interactions at the table, or if you like the idea of leaving your opponents looking like whatever the cat drug in as you show each one exactly which way the cookie crumbles. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section filled to the brim with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which, for me, did not make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget, or a smaller one, if you like what I've done and you want to go heavier into it, or you're interested in one of the ways I took this deck and you'd rather sort of juke into that considering section is a great place for you to begin when you build your own Pride deck for Brenard and Ygra. So let's begin. As I mentioned, this deck has broad synergies, so not all of the tags that we're going to be seeing today fit neatly into these are part of the game plan and these are not, but you'll see it come together as we go through it. We're going to begin with a section of cards that are all about food. We like food because Ygra gives us the ability to, well, Ygra gets bigger whenever we sacrifice our food, and we have other ways to use that food within the deck. So beyond just having our creatures count as food and our opponent's creatures count as food, we get to use that food in other ways, so we might as well. We're going to start with our Gilded Goose, a classic card that even changed the way that Magic Arena works. Let me know in the comments if you want to know the story of that, because it's very funny. This is a single green for an 0/2 bird with flying that says when it enters, we make a food. Pretty simple. We can pay 1 and a green and tap it to make another food, having it lay an egg, or we can tap it and sack a food to add 1 mana of any color. So as long as we have food to sacrifice, it is a mana dork. But with Ygra out, it becomes a sacrifice outlet for any of our creatures, turning them into mana. And when we sacrifice them to the goose, they leave the battlefield, and Ygra gets 2 counters on it. So the goose is pretty nice for us as a way to come in, and at least once it makes 1 mana of any color because it comes in with an egg. We can also lay more eggs as a really nice mana sink as we go along through the game, and be able to use those foods for any number of things. Plus, for all the effects that we have that care about the number of foods or the number of artifacts we have, this can add to our count. So that's true of basically every one of the cards in this section. Next we have Revive the Shire. This is 1 and a green for a sorcery that says return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand and make a food. So a solid little regrowth for us. We don't have very many cards that aren't permanent cards, just 2 sorceries, 3 instants. So Revive the Shire can get back most anything that goes to our graveyard, assuming we did not, when that card went to the graveyard, if it was a creature, assuming we didn't exile it with Brenard to make a 1/1 food golem copy of it. So yeah, plus this comes with a food, so why not? Samwise Gamgee, from surprisingly the same set, is a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary halfling peasant with wonderful art. I really truly love this art. That says, whenever another non-token creature you control enters, create a food token. We are running 45 creatures in this deck, so that's 44 other creatures that can trigger Sam. It does say non-token, so whenever Brenard's 1/1 copies of our creatures come back after they've died and been exiled, come in, then Sam is not going to make us a food, but we're going to get plenty of food when all of our creatures come in over the course of the game, especially since we can get them out turn 2. And Sam gives us a sack outlet. If we sacrifice 3 foods, whether they are tokens, whether they are our creatures that count as foods inherently, or count as foods because they are tokens that Brenard made, or because since those are food artifact creatures, or whether they're just foods simply because Ygra's in play, we sacrifice 3 foods and we get to return a target historic card from our graveyard to our hand. Historic cards are artifacts, legends, and sagas. Don't think we have any sagas in this deck, but of course you could put one in yourself. We do have plenty of legends and several artifacts. Now I do want to make mention, Ygra specifically does not make our cards into artifacts. Ygra only makes our creatures into artifacts, because the way that Ygra is phrased, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Ygra says, other creatures are food artifacts. That means creature permanence, which means on the battlefield. So any of our spells, if we're casting a spell that's, that would get a benefit from, when you cast an artifact spell, we're not casting an artifact spell simply because Ygra is in play. Likewise, if we have a creature in the graveyard, it isn't an artifact unless it says artifact on the card itself. Ygra only makes our creatures in play, which is to say our creature permanents, not our creature cards into foods and therefore artifacts, just so you know. So, Sam lets us sacrifice 3 things, if they are foods, to get a historic card back from our graveyard to our hand, and that's pretty nice. But mostly Sam is in here to just keep making us foods every time we have non-token creatures enter. The Goose Mother is next. This is from Wilds of Eldraine originally. This is X, a green and a blue, for a 2/2 legendary bird Hydra with flying. It comes in with X/1/1 counters on it, and when it does, we make half of X food tokens rounded up. So even if X is only 1, we're going to get a food token. Pretty good. And when it attacks, if we sacrifice a food, we get to draw a card. So this gives us an outlet for our foods, which again is great because when they go away, they're leaving the battlefield and therefore Ygra gets bigger. But also, the Goose Mother is a nice place for us to dump all of our mana. If we happen to draw it late, it just gets bigger and bigger. As it stands though, we can make X equals 0, and we're getting a 2-mana 2/2 flyer that lets us sack foods and draw cards when it attacks. And then every other pip of mana or every other mana we put into the Goose Mother is just gravy after that. Next we have Tough Cookie. This was a absolute terror during Wilds of Eldraine Standard, or Limited I should say. Love this card. This is 1 and a green for a 2/2 artifact creature food golem. So this is already a food and a golem, meaning if Ygra's not in play, this is already going to get +2/+2 and trample from Brenard, and it comes in and makes a food. That's pretty good. It can also, it can let us pay 2 and a green, and until end of turn, target non-creature artifact you control, like a food token, becomes a 4/4 artifact creature. This is a great ability. It will work just as well in Commander as it does in Limited. You hold up 3 mana, 2 and a green, and when your opponents attack, thinking all you have is a cookie and a food, you just pay the 2 and a green, make your food token into a surprise 4/4 blocker, and you got them. And if it's not their turn, if you want to attack with your foods, you've got a bunch of mana and you'd rather use it to surprise attack them with creatures you don't mind losing, rather than cast your spells, go for it. Tough Cookie can do that for you, especially if you've got a bunch of food tokens in play. It doesn't have to be food tokens, it can animate any non-creature artifact, but being able to do that is just a nice surprise. So yeah. Also, it has the food text. Pay 2, tap, sack it, and we gain 3 life. Nice. Next up is Unlucky Cabbage Merchant. Love this card. This is not the Cabbage Merchant of the other Cabbage Merchant. There's 2 of them in the Avatar set. That one is very strong, but also very expensive. And if you want to see a Commander deck based around that one, check out the video description for a link to my version of that one. However, this is a sweet one too. It's a bear. It's a 1 and a green 2/2 human citizen that when it enters, it makes a food. Already okay. And it says whenever we sacrifice a food, we may Rampant Growth, search our library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. And if we search our library this way, we put the Unlucky Cabbage Merchant on the bottom of our library before we shuffle, meaning we just shuffle it into our library. Of course, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, this is the Cabbage Merchant shows up in an episode bearing cabbage when the gang destroys its cabbage cart as part of arriving in a new place. And then the cabbage vendor leaves and will show up again later. It's a great story told in this card. But the trick you have with this card is this. It looks like for 2 mana you get a 2/2 and a food. Then if you crack the food, you'll lose your 2/2, but you'll get to Rampant Growth in the process, plus get the 3 mana from the food. However, when this ability goes on the stack, you could trigger it again. Let's say you have 2 food tokens in play. the Unlucky Cabbage Merchant, and 4 mana. You crack a food, and its ability to gain you 3 life goes on the stack, as does this ability from the Merchant. You hold priority and crack another food, putting its ability on the stack as well, and another instance of this. So this is a sweet way for you to, now you have 2 abilities on the stack that gain you 3 life each, but also 2 abilities that let you Rampant Growth and shuffle away the Cabbage Merchant. So the top one of those will resolve, we'll get to Rampant Growth, shuffle away the Cabbage Merchant, and then the second one will resolve when we get to it and let us Rampant Growth again, and the Cabbage Merchant's already shuffled away, but that's fine. So the more food we sacrifice all at once with the Cabbage Merchant, the more value we get out of it. We turn them into Rampant Growths on a stick. They sort of become Wayfarer's Baubles that gain us 3 life. Pay 2, tap and sack it to Rampant Growth, plus gain 3 life. So we get to do those as many times as we want if we do them all at once, and then we lose our Cabbage Merchant, but it'll come back. So a very nice effect for us if we want to use it that way. It's also sweet because, again, if all of our creatures are food, we can automatically we can sort of inherently sacrifice them since they have the food text, thanks to Ygra. Or we could sacrifice our food tokens, or we could sacrifice our food to other purposes, because it doesn't necessarily say whenever you sacrifice a food to itself. And finally, if Ygra's in play, we can crack the Cabbage Merchant itself, because it is a food. It will go to the graveyard, meaning we will not get to shuffle it into our library since it's no longer on the battlefield when this ability resolves, but we will still get the Rampant Growth effect out of it. And if Brenard's in play as well, we can exile it from our graveyard, make a 1/1 copy of it, which will enter with a food token as well, and then sweet, we've got the ability to do it again. Now it does not see this other ability resolve. I mean, it will be in play to see it resolve, but it doesn't care about it resolving, so it's not like we're going to get to double up on our sacrifice of food triggers with both the original Cabbage Merchant and its copy. That's not how that works, but in any case, this is a great 2-mana card that can get us more ramp than it seems like it would be able to, plus food synergies. Next up, we have Greta Sweet-Tooth Scourge. Love this Signpost Uncommon from Wilds of Eldraine. What amazing art. Love Greta. Cool story, too. This is 1, a black and a green for a 3/3 legendary human warrior that says when she enters, we make a food, and she has 2 abilities. We can pay a green and sack a food to put a 1/1 counter on a creature, but only at sorcery speed. Or we can pay 1 and a black and sack a food to draw a card and lose a life at instant speed. So Greta gives us a constant sack outlet that lets us draw cards, and we lose life, but that's fine. Remember, we can sacrifice our creatures to Greta this way when Ygra's in play, but also we can turn our food into pump for our creatures, and that seems pretty great. Especially since with Brenard in play, all of our food creatures have +2/+2 in trample. So Greta becomes, just to illustrate, a 3-mana 5/5 trample that comes with a food and 2 relevant activated abilities. Just really, really powerful here. Being able to use that to our advantage is something we're going to be doing a lot with Brenard and Ygra both in play. Next, we have Heaped Harvest. This is a card that's just so much fun from Bloomborough. It's 2 and a green for a food artifact that has the food text, pay 2, tap, sack it, gain 3 life. And it says when this enters and when you sacrifice it, not just when it goes to the graveyard, but it has to be sacrificed, we may Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So it enters, and it's 1 more mana than Rampant Growth, but it comes in and it just sits there as a food, and then when we sacrifice it, whether to its own ability or to some other effect, we get to Rampant Growth again. So this is a solid way for us to essentially spend 5 mana over the course of casting and activating it in order to gain 3 life and Explosive Vegetation, which is normally 4 mana, but with this, we're not only gaining 3 life, and we're not having to pay all 4 of our mana in the same turn, but we're also getting value out of the fact that it counts as a food for our cards that care about that, it counts as an artifact for the same reason, and when we sacrifice it, Ygra gets bigger. Neat. Next up, we have a Final Fantasy card. This is Ignis Scientia. I don't know who this person is, or if I said that right at all. Let me know in the comments if you know who this person is. I get the impression they are from Final Fantasy 15. Yes, that's right. And they're part of the team that's on a road trip driving the Regalia, and they have like Prompto Argentum, I think is his name, the guy that's like the selfie social media manager. And anyway, yeah, it seems like a cool person, with the main character being Noctis. If I'm remembering this correctly, please say I'm remembering it correctly. If you want to check out the video's description, I made a Noctis deck as well, and I had a lot of fun with that guy. So yeah, I'm not a Final Fantasy guy, so forgive me. But this person seems cool. He seems like he cares about getting Noctis to eat more healthily, I think. And anyway, this is a 2/2 for 1, a green, and a blue for a legendary human advisor. When Ignis enters, we look at the top 6 cards of our library, and we can put a land from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest go on the bottom in a random order. So it is possible to whiff with this, but usually we're going to find one of our many cards, most of which are non-basic lands, and get it directly into the battlefield tapped, so that's a little bit of ramp built into it. Pretty nice. And it has an ability. I've come up with a new recipe. For 1, a green, and a blue, we can tap and exile a card from a graveyard and make a food token. So this is a little bit of graveyard hate for us if we need to do that. It does not have to be our graveyard, of course, so we want to try and target whichever player is playing Reanimator, or to hold this up if it looks like someone has, like a Raise Dead effect. We can kind of get them with that, and we get to make more food. So yeah, why not? Next up, we have Ninja Pizza. This is from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Eternal set, so maybe the Commander deck, maybe their Draft Night, or Pizza Party product, whatever that thing is called. The Eternal set is kind of strange for TMNT. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment that gives all of our foods the ability to tap and sack in order to make a mana of any color. It does not give them the treasure type, but it gives them the same text as treasure, meaning all of our creatures, when Ygra is out, other than Ygra itself, can be tapped for mana. That's pretty great. That does count as sacrificing those foods, so it will put 2 counters on Ygra. Obviously, on anything else that cares about is sacrificing foods, but those foods go into the graveyard. And we can, turn them into mana that way. That's a little bit of acceleration for us, especially because Ninja Pizza says at the start of our second main phase, we make a food token. So it's like saying, at the start of your second main phase, get a treasure that you can also crack for life, or get a food you can crack for mana. Either way, this is essentially giving us access to 1 more mana every turn. So kind of, this is a Manalith for us. A Manalith that sort of only works on our second turn, but then over the course of several different turns, if we've built up this number of foods and we haven't cracked them for mana, then it's even better than a Manalith. All of the other cards, in this section that make foods are able to now crack them for mana. Seems pretty good. It's a cheaper version of Radiant Lotus, if you want to think of it that way, even though it doesn't do as much for us, but it synergizes what else we're doing. Plus, pizza. Next up, we have Sam Loyal Attendant. This is another Sam. It's Samwise Gamgee, the character, but not Samwise Gamgee, the card. It's Sam Loyal Attendant. This is from the Commander deck. It's 1, a green, and a white for a 2/4 legendary halfling peasant with Partner with Frodo Adventurous Hobbit. Now, normally what this ability means is we can have both Frodo Adventurous Hobbit and Sam Loyal Attendant as our commanders. Just, it's a partner variant, it's already built in. But we don't need that. What's especially cool is the partner ability is not the same as the partner with ability. Partner with means you can't pair this with anything other than the named creature. However, when this enters, if you have that named creature in your deck, you can search your library for it and put it in your hand, then shuffle. I guess you can search your library and fail to find it, shuffle if you want to. So Sam, technically, because of this partner with ability, draws us a card, draws us Frodo. That's pretty good. Sam is more valuable to our deck than Frodo is, but we'll see that soon. Sam says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, make a food token. So if we've got Sam and Ninja Pizza in play, start of combat, we get a food. Start of our second main, we get another food, and both of them can be cracked as treasures if we need to. But we can also crack them as food in a better way, because activated abilities of foods you control cost 1 generic less to activate. Meaning, normally a food costs 2 tap and sack. With Sam Loyal Attendant in play, every food can be tapped for a single generic mana and tap and sack. So that's pretty good. It also means that all of our creatures with activated abilities that have a mana requirement, a generic mana requirement, while Ygra is in play, all of our creatures are foods, other than Ygra itself, which means all of their abilities cost one less to activate. That is a really sweet sort of connective tissue there that applies to, I think, 10 or 11 different cards in the deck. And it always feels fun to be like, wait, I can use this for cheaper when Sam is in play. That's just neat. Next we have Bristlebud Farmer. This is from the big score. 2 and double green for a 5/5 plant druid with trample. Remember, if Brenard is in play, this is a 7/7 trample for 4. As long as Ygra is in play as well. And it says, when this creature enters, we make 2 food tokens. Great, double food. And when it attacks, if we sacrifice a food, we can mill 3 cards and put a permanent from among them into our hand. So, again, most of the cards in our deck are permanents, or permanent cards rather. So this is essentially, when it attacks, sack a food to draw a card, and you even get selection out of it. Nice. Guillaume Master Chef is next, originally from the Strixhaven Commander decks from Commander 21. This is 2, a black and a green, for a 5/3 Legendary Troll Warlock with Trample. Again, when both of our commanders out, this is a 7/5 Trample for 4. That says at the beginning of your end step, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of non-token creatures you had enter the battlefield under your control this turn. So we make a bunch of food at the end step, even if it's just 1, because most turns we're playing a creature spell. So yeah, pretty good as a continuous way of making more food. And a way to use food, because if we pay a generic mana and sacrifice a food, target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, and we tap it. It does not have to be untapped in order for us to use this ability, we just can't tap it anymore, but it still becomes tapped, whether or not it was. But it does gain indestructible. What's especially nice is if we have Sam, Loyal Attendant, in play, and Guillaume, Sam makes Guillaume's ability cost 1 less, of course if they are both foods, or if Guillaume is a food. So all we have to do is sacrifice a food in order to activate this ability without even having to pay mana. Very cool. Finally, we have Knight of the Sweet's Revenge. This is from Wilds of Eldraine. It's really cool in our deck, especially if we can get it out on curve and we're playing out our creatures. This helps us so much. 3 and a green for an enchantment that when it enters, we make a food. It gives all our foods the ability to tap for green mana. Which means if Ygra's in play, all of our creatures, other than Ygra, are mana dorks now. They are all Llanowar elves, because they're all foods, so they can all tap for green mana. Obviously, they can't do that when they have summoning sickness, but when they don't, all of our creatures tap for mana. But even if not, we have plenty of ways to make food tokens in this deck, so now all of them, we don't have to use our Ninja Pizza in order to tap and sack them for 1 mana of any color, even though that's great for us because we've got a 4-color deck. If we only need green, which is our biggest color in this deck, we can just tap those foods for mana right away and just keep them around until next turn. So yeah, a sweet way to accelerate ourselves on this enchantment. In addition, we can pay 5 and double green and sack this enchantment to give all of our creatures a power and toughness boost equal to the number of foods we control until end of turn, but only at sorcery speed. So this can really get out of hand if we've got a nice food thing going on, or if we just have Ygra in play. Imagine if we have 8 creatures in play, we'd pay 7 mana, some of which may have been paid from tapping foods or tapping our creatures. And if we've got 7 creatures in play, or let's say 8 creatures in play, I think I just said that, all of our creatures get +8/+8 until end of turn. Assuming 8 creatures plus Ygra. There we go. So yeah. And then we attack with our big beaters. If our opponents kill them, hopefully Brenard is in play, and we're able to exile them and bring them right back as 1/1 food golems. Neat. Yeah, Knight of Sweet's Revenge is a really cool card. As someone who played food deck in standards, and still does sometimes, it's pretty fun. So that covers our food section. We're going to talk now about our payoffs. These are all cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. For example, we saw Sam Loyal Attendant a minute ago. Let's look at Frodo Adventurous Hobbit. This is the card that Sam can find, or that can find Sam, because it has partnered with Sam Loyal Attendant. This is a white and a black for a 1/3 legendary halfling scout with vigilance. It says when Frodo attacks, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. So if some things are going on, assuming we've gained 3 life when we attack with Frodo, we have a way to draw a card. So Frodo gives us a little bit of card draw as we attack with him. But I know you're thinking, Frodo is not really that big. A 1/3 is, it's small. It's a halfling. Even if we have Ygra and Brenard in play, Frodo's now a 3/5 since Frodo is getting +2/+2 for being a food. But does the ring help us with that? Well, in a manner of speaking. This is how the ring tempts you works. The ring tempts you is, it gives you this emblem, the ring. When it tempts you, you get that emblem named the ring, and that emblem gains its next ability. So if you only got it for the first time, it gains its first ability. If you already had it, it gains its second ability, in addition to whatever abilities it had before. And you have to choose a creature to become your ring bearer. You have to choose one if you have a creature in play. If you don't control a creature, the ring still tempts you, and it will still gain its next ability. It gains its abilities from top to bottom, as you see with the little arrows here reminding you. Every time the ring tempts you, we have to choose a creature, like I mentioned, if we control one, and we can only have one instance of this emblem, and only one ring bearer at a time. If ever we choose a ring bearer and we already have one, the new one becomes a ring bearer, and the old one stops being it. So what does it give us? Well, at the first step, this is why it's helpful for Frodo. If Frodo is a 1/3, a ring bearer is legendary, assuming it wasn't already, and cannot be blocked by creatures with greater power. So if Frodo is a 1/3 and our opponents have a 3/3, they can't block it because that's bigger than 1. So our opponent is going to have a creature that has death touch or something else in order to block our creature profitably. So pretty nice. Even true of a 3/5. Our opponent can't block with a 4/1 or something because it's greater power. And if they block with a 3/3, well, it's going to die to Frodo, but Frodo's not going to die itself if Frodo's a 3/5. Then, whenever our ring bearer attacks, this is our second level of the ring, we draw a card and discard a card. A little bit of looting never hurt anyone. Then whenever our ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at the end of combat. That's whether or not our ring bearer actually does any damage to it or would kill it with combat damage, or whether our ring bearer dies in combat. Any of those things can happen, but this is a triggered ability that goes on the stack and resolves whenever that ring bearer becomes blocked. It just creates a delayed trigger at the end of combat so that creature that blocked our ring bearer, if it's still in play at the end of combat, it gets sacrificed. So this might as well be death touch. And finally, whenever our ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life, not just that opponent. So the ring gives us a lot of value, and the only way we have in this deck to trigger it is Frodo. But that's still pretty good. Frodo is able to do a lot for us. And all it takes in order to have the ring tempt us is for us to attack with Frodo on a turn we've already gained 3 or more life, which means we've sacrificed a food. Of course, Sam Loyal Attendant makes food for us every start of combat, so we get to make that food, immediately crack it, attack with Frodo, and the ring will tempt us. If we make Frodo our ring bearer, Frodo is going to be harder to block, but of course we can make anything our ring bearer. And we get a bunch of other value out of it as well. We get to loot when we attack with our ring bearer. We get to have our opponent be forced to sacrifice any blockers that they block with our ring bearer with, and so forth. And if we're at the point where we're looting, Frodo being our ring bearer and the ring has tempted us 2 or more times this game, so that means we're at the second ability or more with our ring emblem, then we get to draw a card as well. So pretty sweet. The ring tempts us, which means we're going to be able to get that value and we're going to get a card out of it. Seems good. Next up, we have Marionette Apprentice, a card I really love, just the vibe of it and also the mechanics from Modern Horizons 3. This is a 1/2 human artificer for 1 and a black with Fabricate 1, meaning it comes in and it either comes in with a 1/1 counter on it or making a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. If we want more artifacts for our artifact synergies, Marionette Apprentice can do that for us. If we want to pump this up a little bit, we can do that too. And if we have both of our commanders in play, putting a counter on the Marionette Apprentice means it will enter and become a 4/5 for 2, which is crazy. And then it says, whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is, in a way, a blood artist for our creatures and our artifacts. It doesn't gain us any life, but it does drain our opponents, and that's pretty sweet. Next we have Sarenth Steelseeker. This is 1 and a green for a 1/2 Human Artificer Scout that says whenever an artifact you control enters, which, I want to be clear, if Ygra is in play, Ygra's continuous effect that makes all other creatures into food is applicable as that creature enters as well. So our creatures will enter as artifacts. That's why they would trigger Artifact Fall, and so therefore the Steelseeker. Just so you know, if Ygra's in play and Sarenth Steelseeker's in play, whenever we have a creature enter, it's going to trigger the Steelseeker. So, whenever an artifact we control enters, we get to look at the top card of our library. If it's a land, we can reveal it and put it in our hand, and if we don't, if we don't put it in our hand, whether or not it's a land, if we don't put it in our hand, we can put it into the graveyard. So it's kind of like every time we have an artifact enter, we get to surveil, and if we decide not to put it in the graveyard, if it was a land, it can go in our hand instead. That's kind of neat. Yeah, being able to always have a land in hand, and therefore be able to make our land drops pretty easily, the Steelseeker can do a lot of work for us. Plus, gets lands off the top of our library, or other cards off the top of our library that we don't want to get at that moment, to help us find something better. We've seen the Cabbage Merchant gives us a payoff for sacrificing our food, as we've already seen. Yoshin Dissident, from the same set as our Steelseeker, the Brothers War, is a green and a white for a 1/1 Human Artificer that says whenever an artifact we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on a creature we control. This gives us a chance to protect ourselves, or protect our commanders by making them bigger, to protect our little 1/1 food golems, which, by the way, are 3/3 food golems when Brenard is still in play, and just make our creatures bigger every time we have a creature enter, whether it entered because we cast it, or it entered because a creature died and Brenard made a copy of it and Ygra's still in play. So yeah, this can pump up all of our team for a minimal amount. What's especially nice is, this is maybe just a personal thing, but I really like having 1/1s in this deck, because that means when we make a copy with Brenard by exiling it when it dies, we don't lose any value. It's the same creature stat-wise and everything else. Yeah. Next, we have Cauldron of Essence, a recent addition from Secrets of Strixhaven. This is 1, a black and a green, for an artifact that says whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So we're going to be having a lot of this happen, whether we're sacrificing our creatures or losing them in combat, so that we get our value out of Brenard and our value out of Ygra. So in addition to draining our opponents and gaining us a little bit of life, which can be relevant in other ways, we can also use the Cauldron for 1, a black, a green, tap and sack a creature, to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield at sorcery speed. So if we are not exiling our creatures when they die for Brenard's ability, we just leave them in the graveyard, sack a different creature, and we get that creature that was in our graveyard back to the battlefield at full power. Pretty nice. Plus, of course, sacrificing that creature triggers the first ability of the Cauldron and drains our opponents for 1 and gains us a life. Pact Doll Terror is next. This is 3 and a black for a 3/4 artifact creature toy that says whenever this creature or another artifact we control enters, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So another artifact fall trigger that drains our opponents. It is really annoying in this deck, especially if we get to see like a bunch of our creatures die all at once, including the Pact Doll Terror. We exile all of them, bring them all back. The Terror sees itself enter, so it sees all the other creatures enter. And we get to get a trigger for each one of them, including the Pact Doll Terror itself. A lot of fun. Next we have Mazarek Crawl Death Priest. 3, a black and a green for a 2/2 legendary insect shaman with flying that says whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. That's just basically an anthem. Each creature, whenever any player sacrifices something, and with Ygra in play, we've given every player the ability to sacrifice any of their creatures whenever they want to pay 2, tap, and sack it. Yeah, Mazarek gives us a lot of power, which is why 5 mana for a 2/2 flyer tends to be pretty good in this deck. Next up, we have Motivated Pony. This is 4 and a green for a 3/3 horse with trample and haste. So 3/3 trample haste, not terrible. And when it enters, attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. I'm sorry, when it attacks. Attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn, but if a food entered under our control this turn, we untap those creatures and they get an additional +2/+2. So essentially, if this comes in and then it attacks, everything gets +1/+1, including itself. But if a food entered, everything gets +3/+3 total, and essentially vigilance because we untap them. So yeah, because the Motivated Pony, if Ygra is in play, is a food, then a food will have entered under our control this turn. We're going to have that happening a lot whenever this attacks. So much of the time, Motivated Pony just says, if you attack with this, all your attacking creatures untap and have +3/+3. This is a terrific boost card for us that's in our theme and gives us, you know, a little bit of a, not really a crater hoof kind of effect, but something kind of similar to it, you know, sort of the Endra's Forerunners type effect, simply because if we have both commanders in play, the Pony giving everything, including itself, +2 or +3/+3 and pseudo vigilance, on top of Brenard giving everything +2/+2, everything other than Ygra, of course, like, that's essentially +5/+5 trample, which is what Brenard is giving us, and vigilance. That's almost what the Endra's Forerunners does. Like, that's not as much of a bonus, or that's more of a bonus than the Endra's Forerunners. But yeah, we've contrived it together using 3 different cards. So yeah, it's just fun. The Pony as a 5/5, or it attacks as basically a 6/6 while Ygra's in play, since it is a 3/3 and it gets +1/+1 and +2/+2. So a 6/6 vigilance, trample, haste. Yeah, crazy. Love this Pony. Finally, we have Kappa Cannoneer. Just a strong card. They reprinted it in Modern Horizons 3 and Edge of Eternity's Commander. This is 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature Turtle Warrior with Improvise. We can tap our artifacts when we're casting the spell after we activate our mana abilities, and each artifact we do pays for one of the generic mana cost of the Cannoneer. Which means, if we have a bunch of food tokens in play, we can make the Kappa Cannoneer cheaper. Or if we've got a lot of creatures and it's late game or something, we tap some of our creatures if we don't need them for something else. And they're artifacts if Ygra's in play, so we can use them to improvise. Even at 6 mana though, this is a great card because it's a 4 mana with, or it's a 4/4 with Ward 4 that says whenever it or another artifact we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on it and it can't be blocked this turn. Whenever it enters, it gets a counter, so it's a 5/5 with Ward 4. And then every one of our other artifacts enters and puts another counter on it and makes it unblockable. This can absolutely get out of hand, and it's hard for our opponents to interact with, not just because it's unblockable, but because it has Ward 4, which sometimes is hexproof. So this is a great piece of removal bait for our opponents because it can get out of hand so much, which means they're using the removal on the Kappa Cannoneer rather than on Ygra, which is the thing we need to protect the most. Very cool. So that covers our payoff section, all the cards that reward us for the things we're doing. I want to look next at our affinity section. These are cards that give us, that care about our things that we have in play already, the number of things we have in play in such a way. So Banquet Guests is X, a green and a white for a 0/0 halfling citizen with affinity for foods, meaning it costs a generic less for each food we control. So let's assume we have Ygra in play and 2 other creatures. That means we have 2 foods in play. So we declare X is going to be 2 when we cast this, but we only pay a green and a white because it costs 1 less for each food we have. So that affinity pays for both of the 2 that we would have to put into X. So this is just 2 mana, if you want to think of it this way, and its X is going to equal whatever the number of foods we have, which, if Ygra's in play, it means whatever the number of creatures we have, minus Ygra themselves. And yeah, this can just become a huge creature for the cost of 2 mana, or maybe a little more. If we want to make it bigger, we could pump mana into it. But usually, if we have enough food, this becomes a massive creature that's only 2 mana, And if we have Ygra and Brenard in play, it gets +2/+2 on top of that. So even if there are no foods in play, well, that's not going to work for us, but if there are no foods in play, then that's a shame. We got to pay into it. But yeah, beyond that, it's going to have that many counters on it. Twice that many counters. Goodness. So a green and a white and 2 foods in play means we can only pay a green and a white and get a 4/4. Is that right? Affinity for foods means X equals 2. Twice X 1/1 counters. Yeah, this card is cracked. What are we looking at? It's a trampler. We're paying 2 mana for it if we have 2 foods in play, and we're getting a 4/4 trample? This is unbelievable. I'm sorry, I misread this card while making the deck, and it's just better than I thought. Because it doesn't end there. It says pay 2 and sack a food, and it gets indestructible until end of turn. Come on. That gives it indestructible. That gives us a sacrifice outlet for our foods, and when we sacrifice that food, Ygra gets bigger. This could happen in the middle of combat. Amazing. This is a great card. Yeah, put this sucker in your deck. So yeah, it doesn't really have, affinity in a, affinity for artifacts way. Affinity for food is a little bit more restrictive, but not so much in this deck, thanks to Ygra. Next, we have Banished to Another Universe. This is a card that I don't get to put in a lot of decks, but I really like it. It's from the Doctor Who decks. It's 4 and a white for an enchantment that says when it enters, we exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So it's an Oblivion Ring, or a Banisher Priest, or a Banishing Light, whatever you like. But it has affinity for historic permanents. As we talked about before, historic permanents are permanents that are artifacts, legends, or sagas, or sagas. Meaning, if we have Ygra in play, all we need is 4 other creatures, or 3 other creatures, I should say, and this costs a single white, because our 3 creatures are foods, which makes them artifacts, and Ygra is legendary. So this can become, and usually is, doing a pretty good impression of that 6 mana white enchantment from Dominaria United with Domain that usually comes out as a Banishing Light for a single white. It would be real helpful for this analogy if I can remember the name of that card. Point being, usually this is a single white to get rid of any non-land permanent at sorcery speed. Love it. Next we have Urza, Chief Artificer. This is from, of course, the Brothers War Commander decks, which is why it looks like this. It's 3, a white, a blue, and a black, so 3 and Esper, for a 5/5 legendary human artificer that has affinity for artifact creatures. It's not the same as affinity for artifacts, but in this deck, sometimes it's about as good, especially if we have Ygra in play. This can become just a white, blue, and black. Pretty good. It gives all of our artifact creatures Menace. That's incredible. Love to be able to have that for Ygra itself, but Menace is pretty great on its own, so yeah, give that to everything other than Ygra, it's still alright. It includes Urza himself when Ygra is in play. And at the beginning of our end step, we make what's called a Construct, a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token that gets +1/+1 for each artifact we control. This is another thing that's sort of like real affinity, I guess. Yeah, it just makes us, at every end step, another creature that's already an artifact creature and gets bigger for all of our artifacts. So that's making Urza into a dangerous piece on our board, because he's constantly giving us more creatures that are constantly getting bigger, and all of our creatures, other than Ygra, are getting menace from him, including himself. Sweet. Finally, in this section, we have Thought Monitor. This is a 6 and a blue 2/2 flyer that when it enters, we draw 2 cards. It's an artifact creature construct, and it has affinity for artifacts. So, again, much like our Banished to Another Universe, in this deck is often just a single white, Thought Monitor is often a single blue. If we've got 6 or more other artifacts in play already, when we cast this, it's discounted by that number. We're casting it for a single blue, getting a 2/2 flyer, and when it enters, we draw 2. Very nice. Even if we're playing this for 3 mana, it's at sorcery speed, so 2 and a blue to draw 2 cards is already divination, and that's already fine. And it's leaving behind a Winddrake, a 2/2 flyer. Sounds great. So that is our affinity section. We're going to look at something that's similar to that right now, which is cranial plating. Cranial plating is an effect that essentially says this creature gets +1/+0, or +X/+0, where X is the number of artifacts you control. So I'm using this kind of loosely, but I want to just describe it because we've seen Banquet Guests. It comes in with counters equal to essentially the number of foods we had, except it's twice the number of foods, plus we can pump in more. So it's not exactly the same as a cranial plating thing, but it works similarly. It gives us a creature that has power and also toughness based on the number of foods we have, which is close to artifacts in this deck. Even though it's twice, yeah, it works out. Honored Dray Leader works kind of similarly, but a little more directly. This is a 1/1 Squirrel Warrior for 2 and a green with Trample, and when it enters, we put a 1/1 counter on it for each other squirrel and or food we control. So, other squirrel and or food means every other creature besides Ygra when Ygra's in play. So, a bunch of different counters on it, so usually this is not a 1/1 with Trample for 3, it's usually a large Trampler for 3. But even if we get it out early, whenever another squirrel or food we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on it. And when they leave, we don't lose those counters, so it's not the same as real cranial plating, it's just better. It gives us everything that is an artifact, or that is a food rather, gives us a counter on it when it comes in. We keep those counters, and anytime more of things come in, we get more counters. Love it. Next we have Bronze Guardian. This is 4 and a white for a star 5 artifact creature golem with double strike and ward 2, and other artifacts you control have ward 2. So a nice way to protect our entire board when Ygra is in play, other than Ygra itself. And Bronze Guardian's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. This is more like a traditional cranial plating effect. I do want to mention, for both of these sections, and for every other section, Affinity, cranial plating, whatever, if you were to check out the considering section at the bottom of this Moxfield list, you'll see more things in these categories if you like that as an idea for something you want to build into your own deck. So the one thing I want to mention about this is Bronze Guardian has this ability, and if it dies and we bring it back as a 1/1 food golem with Brenard, it will become a 1/1 food golem. It will not have this effect anymore. Yeah, so we won't be able to have its kind of cranial plating effect, which is why I used fewer cards with that kind of cranial plating effect than I could have, simply because when they come back with Brenard, they're not as good. This is still a double striker, it still has ward 2 and still gives all of our other artifacts ward 2, but if we bring it back with Brenard, it doesn't have quite the power it would have. As opposed to Honored Dray Leader and Banquet Guests, if we bring them back, Honored Dray Leader is going to come in as a 1/1, so it's basically the same card, and Banquet Guests comes in better because it's a base power toughness 1/1. And when I say better, I mean not very good at all, because it won't come in with any counters on it since we will not have cast it. But it's still a 1/1 trample, which with Brenard in play makes it a 3/3 trample, and it still has the ability to become indestructible if we sacrifice a food, so it's still a sacrifice outlet for our foods. Yeah. Finally, we've seen Urza. Urza is in this section as well, not because he has Affinity for artifacts, but because his construct tokens that he makes, his constructs, are cranial plated, since they get +1/+1 for each artifact we control. That covers our cranial plating section. Hey, do you feel like maybe liking the video? Nice. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like the video just because I asked you to. I appreciate you watching either way. Thanks for joining me. Anyway, let's keep this going and talk about some of our support for our game plan, starting with our card advantage section. As usual, I have tagged this section as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards do the draw a card action, they just give us access to more cards. So for example, Frodo draws us Sam, at the very least, when Frodo enters, but also can draw us a card if, when we attack with him, if we've gained 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts us, and it has done so 2 or more times by the time this has resolved. Yeah. Next we have Herd Heirloom. This is going up in price, and it's worth it because it's good. It's 1 and a green for an artifact that if we tap it, we get 1 mana of any color that we can spend only to cast a creature spell. Most of the spells in our deck are creature spells. So Herd Heirloom is basically a 2 mana untapped rock that taps for all 4 of our colors, as long as we're casting a creature spell. Also, we can tap it, and until end of turn, target creature we control with power 4 or greater gains trample, and when it deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So this is a nice source of trample if we don't have Brenard in play, helping out all of our creatures when they are foods or when they are golems. It also gives us a nice way. It only affects our power 4 or greater creatures, but we have a lot of those, particularly Ygra. When Ygra comes in, Ygra is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and doesn't have any evasion. So giving it trample and curiosity are pretty good. Yeah, even if we're just using this for mana. And the trick with this, of course, is we don't activate it at all until after blocks. So if our opponent thinks, oh, they're blocking our huge cat commander and stopping damage, we then activate Herd Heirloom, targeting Ygra post blockers, but before damage. And now Ygra has trample and is going to get us a card in addition to killing whatever creature they blocked with. We've seen our Steel Seeker. It can essentially draw us a land if there's a land on top of our library every time we have an artifact come in. The Goose Mother, when it attacks, if we sack a food, we draw a card. Garruk's Uprising is next. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment with 3 abilities on it. One is, all of our creatures have trample. That helps Ygra, that helps every one of our creatures, including Brenard, even if they aren't artifact creatures that Brenard is giving trample. So yeah, particularly just our commander is great for this. It also says, when this enters, if we control a creature power 4 or greater, we draw a card. If both of our commanders are in play, all of our creatures other than Ygra are getting +2/+2 from Brenard. So that means it's very likely, I think we have more than 20 creatures in our deck that if we have that situation happening, are going to draw us a card when Garruk's Uprising is in play, assuming that those creatures are in play. But what if the Uprising comes in first? Well, whenever a creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card. So this is sweet if we cast this before we get Ygra in play, of course. And if Ygra and Brenard and Garruk's Uprising are all in play, when a creature power 2 or greater enters, it's going to enter as a creature power 4 or greater, thanks to being a food, and Brenard giving all of our foods +2/+2. Neat. Or food creatures, that is. Greta, we've already seen, we can pay 1 and a green and sack a food to put a 1/1 counter on a creature. We haven't seen Kutsil, Malamet Exemplar. This is 1, a green, and a white for a 3/3 legendary cat warrior that says your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. What a great protective ability. Just being able to shut down our opponents from interacting with us during our turn is very strong, whether we're going to combat or not, and we're probably going to combat with Ygra. And whenever one or more creatures we control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So this is notable because we want this in our Brenard deck. It's Brenard giving all of our creatures, if Ygra's in play other than Ygra, a +2/+2 bonus, so we don't need to rely on counters or other Anthem effects. Brenard is doing it for us, straight out of the command zone, or I guess he came straight out of the command zone once he's in play, essentially making it so anytime we hit a player with any of our creatures that's pumped up with Brenard, we draw a card. And it does say 1 or more creatures, so we don't get a card per creature that hits, unless those creatures are hitting multiple players, because it says a player. If we want to send our creatures at multiple different players, that seems pretty good, and each player we hit with our creatures is going to draw us a card. We have not seen Lauren of the Third Path yet. Lauren is my favorite Rec Sage. She's also from the Brothers' War. 2 and a white gives us a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance, and when Lauren enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or an enchantment. This is stronger in this deck than it is in most decks, because when Ygra is in play, all of our opponent's creatures are artifacts, they're foods. So Lauren can enter and destroy a creature that an opponent controls, assuming that creature doesn't have hexproof or shroud or indestructible or something. Lauren becomes not a Reclamation Sage, but a Ravenous Chupacabra. Just kills anything creature-wise, or artifact, or enchantment that we want Lauren to when she hits the battlefield. And when she dies, we make a copy of her with Brenard. She comes in and does it again as a 1/1 food golem. Very cool. Plus, we can tap her, and we and a target opponent each draw a card. That's crazy. Just being able to get a free card every turn, build a little goodwill with one of your opponents, have a little bit of group hugginess to it, in addition to getting rid of an artifact, enchantment, or probably a creature. Lauren does a lot for us. Next, we have Morbid Opportunist. This is 2 and a black. For a 1/3 human rogue that says whenever one or more other creatures die, we draw a card, but only once each turn. That does not say only on our turns, and it does not say whenever one or more other creatures you control die. This is if we kill an opponent's creature, if opponent A attacks opponent B and there's creatures that are dying, as long as Morbid Opportunist hasn't triggered this turn yet, it's going to trigger and we're going to get a card. Sometimes this is an extra card every turn of a turn cycle. Yeah, this can really do a lot for us, and I'm glad to be able to have it in our deck that happens to have black in it. Yeah, we've seen Sam. Sam draws us Frodo. Bristlebud Farmer, when it attacks, we can sack a food, mill 3, and put a permanent from among them into our hand, which is like drawing a card. Prime Speaker Vanifar is from Ravnica Allegiance, is a 2 green and a blue 2/4 legendary elf ooze wizard, that has Birthing Pod as its ability. We tap and sack another creature to search our library for a creature with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value, then put that card onto the battlefield and shuffle, but only as a sorcery. So Prime Speaker Vanifar, just very interesting for us. With both of our commanders in play, this is a 4/6 for 4 that lets us sacrifice any of our creatures at sorcery speed, admittedly, there it is, and find something that's 1 mana value higher. With cards like this, I think the polite way to play this is to have your deck list open on your phone or on a piece of paper or something like that, organized by mana value, so that you know, okay, it's 2 more turns before it's my turn. I'm going to be sacrificing, my Sarenth Steel Seeker on my turn. It's a 2-drop, so I need to look at all my 3-drops and know what I'm going to get. And obviously, your plan might change, but it helps to get to your turn and not have to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice, I guess this one, oh, maybe this one. No, I'll sacrifice the first one, and now I'm going to search through my library and figure out what I'm going to get based on what I'm searching. Oh, guys, can I go back and sacrifice this other creature instead? No, it's more polite to have a plan. You don't want to waste everyone else's time or your time playing this game and, getting to get through it. However, with both of our commanders in play, or with just Brenard in play, when we sacrifice a creature to Vanifar's ability, Bernard's going to trigger, we can exile that creature from our graveyard and make a 1/1 copy of it. So even though it's a 1/1, it's a food golem, and it's therefore a 3/3 with Bernard in play, and it's sticking around. We get its Enter's Trigger again, we get whatever other abilities it has, plus we get all of Vanifar's, all the remaining parts of Vanifar's ability. We get another creature too. Sweet. We've got a Solemn Simulacrum. Love this friend. 4 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature, Golem. Notably, it's a Golem, which means if Ygra's not in play, this still gets +2/+2 from Brenard. So it's a 4 mana 4/4 with Bernard in play. Neat. And when the Sad Robot enters, we get to Rampant Growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. And when it dies, we draw a card. Both of these are Maze, but we're going to do it. Why not? So when this dies, we draw a card, we exile it with Bernard, it comes back in as a 1/1, which Bernard makes into a 3/3, and when that copy comes in, we Rampant Growth again. Sounds great. An excellent card to sacrifice to Vanifar, because we have a bunch of sweet 5-mana creatures in this deck. Particularly, Vorinclex. Vorinclex is a sweet creature. I'm going to go through it, but I do want to mention, like I've said a couple of times already, check the video's description for a commander deck featuring Vorinclex as the commander, because I made a commander deck for every creature in March of the Machine. Not to mention, or rather not just the main set, but the special pre-release promos, the Jumpstart legends, and all of the non-face legends from the commander products. So yeah, if you like March of the Machine, check out Vorinclex in the description, and you'll see the playlist it's part of. So, what is Vorinclex though? Vorinclex is 3 and double green for a 6/6 legendary Phyrexian Praetor that has Trample and Reach. Vorinclex enters, and we get to search our library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them in our hand, and shuffle. So I know this looks like we're getting a double Lay of the Land. We're finding 2 forests and putting them in our hand. But it does not say basic forests, and we have a number of dual lands in this deck. And since forests are the land that makes green, and green is our biggest color, these are the ones that are easiest for us to find. We're going to be able to shore up our green as well as get the dual lands that we're looking for. So this is pretty sweet. And if you upgrade the mana base, as I will explain how to do near the end of the video, you'll end up with even more dual lands probably. So you'll be able to get even more hits with Vorinclex. So anyway, it's a 5 mana, 6/6 trample reach that draws you 2 cards, 2 forests when it comes in. Already great, but for 6 and double green, we can exile Vorinclex and return it to the battlefield transformed under our control as a sorcery. It transforms into the Grand Evolution, which is a saga. If you haven't seen sagas, sagas are an enchantment that when they enter and at the start of our first main phase every turn, we get a lore counter on it, and then it triggers the ability equal to the number of lore counters on it. So when Vorinclex first transforms, it comes in with a lore counter and we trigger Chapter 1, which has us mill 10 cards, and we get to put up to 2 creature cards from among those milled cards onto the battlefield. Just get 2 creatures in play. I know this is an expensive cost for 8 mana, but it's just so powerful to be able to just mill 10, and we're gonna see 2 creatures, so we get the 2 best ones and put them into play. Chapter 2, which we will get to trigger at the start of our next first main phase on our next turn, it'll get that second lore counter, and we will get to distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures we control. Great. Putting counters all over our stuff makes our things bigger, doesn't matter, or doesn't bother me a bit. And then finally, the next turn, at the start of our first main phase, we get our 3rd lore counter, and normally on a saga, after the 3rd chapter, or the last chapter ability has left the stack, we sacrifice the saga, but not so with the Grand Evolution, because its last ability is, until the end of turn, all of our creatures spend a generic mana, and this creature fights a creature we don't control. So, until end of turn, all of our creatures can just fight our opponent's stuff, which they've gotten bigger, and we've gotten our best things into play the last couple of turns, so this is probably just a removal effect. But also, we exile this saga and return it to the battlefield from face up, which makes it Vorinclex again. Vorinclex will not gain this ability, because Vorinclex will not be on the battlefield as a creature when creatures we control gain this ability, but Vorinclex does re-enter, and so when Vorinclex enters, we get to tutor up 2 more forest cards, put them in our hand. So we get our 6/6 trample reach back, get some more forests, and we can do this all over again whenever we have another 6 and double green if we want to. So yeah, so much value out of the Grand Evolution, and out of the front side of Vorinclex especially, even if it's just drawing 2 forests. Next we have Angel of the Ruins. This is 5 and double white for a 5/7 artifact creature angel with flying that says, when it enters, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Again, if Ygra is in play, this exiles 2 artifacts, enchantments, or creatures. As long as they can be targeted, they're just exiled, since all of the creatures in play, other than Ygra, including Angel of the Ruins, are foods. So yeah, this is a sweet removal effect that just gets better with one of our commanders in play. But it's in this section because it has plane cycling for 2 generic mana. Plane cycling means while this is in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to search for a plains, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle. Just like Vorinclex, this doesn't say basic, so we can find any one of our dual-typed lands that is a plains and something else, and we find the one that gives us the color we're looking for most. You know, maybe we're looking for a white or blue land. Maybe we need more green in order to cast Vorinclex. We get a white and green land. Either way, we're all set. So Angel of the Ruins is terrific for us early game because it's a 2 mana draw a plains spell. And late game, or mid game even, we can play it for 7 mana, get rid of 2 artifacts, enchantments, or probably creatures if Ygra's in play, and then we've got a 5/7 flyer that just floats around, waiting for us to attack with it, or block with it, or just sacrifice it so that we can bring it back with Brenard as a 1/1 flyer that still enters and exiles 2 artifacts or enchantments. So yeah, very cool. We've already seen Thought Monitor. Thought Monitor enters and draws us 2 cards, and that is our card advantage section. Let's take a look now at our acceleration section, which again I've just shorthanded as ramp. We've seen the Gilded Goose. It can tap and sack a food to make 1 mana of any color. It comes with a food, and it can lay eggs to make more food for us. Of course, we're running Soul Ring. Soul Ring is a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. It's the symbol of the format for a reason. It's great acceleration. Put it in your deck. Next, we have Studious First Year. This is a card from Secrets of Strixhaven that is a prepare creature. It's a single green mana for a 1/1 bear wizard. Interestingly, it's a bear, but it's only a 1/1. No questions there. And it enters prepared. While it's prepared, we can cast a copy of its prepare spell, which happens to be Rampant Growth, and when we do so, it unprepares it. So it comes in, and it's a 1 mana 1/1. That's fine. That gives us the ability to cast Rampant Growth. 1 and a green for a sorcery, search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So this is 3 mana, if you want to think of it this way, for a 1/1 and a Rampant Growth effect, which is kind of Return to the Wilds. Return to the Wilds is a card from Wells of Eldraine for 2 and a green that lets you choose 2 of 3 options. Make a 1/1 human, search for a land and put a basic and put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle, or make a food token. So that would be a good inclusion in this deck, so why didn't we do it? Well, I mean, I guess you haven't seen that we haven't done it, but we already looked at the food section, so I guess you have. In any case, the reason we want Studious First Year is because, again, for 3 mana, we get a 1/1 and a Rampant Growth effect that we don't have to do on the same turn. Maybe turn 1 of this game, we play a forest and a Studious First Year. Turn 2, we play another untapped land and Rampant Growth right away. And then, when we have both of our commanders in play, or just Brenard really, Studious First Year dies, and we exile it and make a copy of it, which, like I mentioned before, it's a 1/1, so we get the copy in that's basically the same as the original, and it also enters prepared, so we can Rampant Growth again. So we've got this effect multiple times. And if Ygra is in play as well, we can take the Studious First Year and just sacrifice it as a food. Just use it for food in so many other ways. It just gets better and better the more things we have in play. But particularly if Brenard is in play, this is 1 mana for a free Rampant Growth, or for us essentially drawing a Rampant Growth, if you want to think of it that way. It's not in our card advantage section because it is dependent on the Studious First Year still being in play when we try to cast it, but similar. And then when we have it die, Brenard brings it back and we get another Rampant Growth we wanted. Nice. Plus it's just that food all the time with Ygra in play. Next we have our Arcane Signet. Gotta run this. 2 generic mana for an artifact that comes in untapped and taps to add 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. We've got 2 commanders, so our color identity is everything but red. We're making white, blue, black, or green with this. And so yeah, it's the most powerful 2 mana untapped rock we can run, so we're gonna run it. We're also running Farseek. This is 1 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So it's like a juiced Rampant Growth. It cannot find forests, or can it? In this deck, we don't have any mountains, but we have plenty of plains, islands, and swamps. All of which we have basic versions of, but we also have dual-typed versions. Some of them are plains forests, which means we can find a forest with it. An island forest, a swamp forest. We can find all of these, or if we need a white and a black source, then we just get a plain swamp. That's fine too. Farseek goes and finds the color we need most of all, and it can find a basic, but hopefully it finds one of our dual lands. Puts it on the battlefield tapped, and we're all set and ready to make more mana of the type that we looked for, and then one other thing, which might again be green. Fellwar Stone is next. This is also really important. It's not quite as good as our Arcane Signet, but it's pretty close. 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So yes, if all of our opponents are mono red or are colorless only decks, then this doesn't make mana that we can't use for generic mana costs. And that's fine. For 2 generic mana, an untapped 2 mana rock that makes mana we can spend on our generic costs, that's totally okay. It could be a lot better, and it will be. Because when are you in a pod where no one else is running green? This making green is our biggest color, so that is great for us. And every other color of mana that our opponent's lands can produce just gets better for us, other than, red. So this is just a sweet effect that gets, like I say, stronger as the game goes on, usually. But it also works for fun things like if an opponent has a Chromatic Lantern, that Chromatic Lantern gives their lands the ability to tap for mana of any color, which means our Fellwar Stone can then tap for mana of any color. So yeah, this can really just help us out, fixing our mana and giving us everything we need as the game goes on. Next, we've seen the Herd Heirloom. It can tap for 1 mana of any color, as long as we're using that to cast a creature spell. Sakura Tribe Elder is next. This is Steve. 1 and a green for a 1/1 Snake Shaman that says sacrifice this creature and Rampant Growth. So it's 2 mana for a creature that we do have to sacrifice in order to ramp with it. But with Brenard in play, we can bring it right back, and it's a 1/1 token version, so it's the same thing. If we have Ygra in play, then we just had a food go to the graveyard, so we get counters on Ygra. And of course, this counts for all the other things that Ygra makes our creatures count for in terms of affinity or affinity for food, whatever it may be, and for sacrificing foods for every effect that cares about that. So yeah. Next up, we have Skyseeker Serpent. This is a really cool card from Ether Drift. A green and a blue gives us a 1/1 snake with flying and death touch. So it's not a bird, and it's not an artifact creature unless Ygra's in play, but flying and death touch for a 1/1 that costs a blue and another color pip sounds a lot like Baleful Strix to me. This is close to Baleful Strix. With Ygra in play, it might as well be Baleful Strix, except that it doesn't draw us a card. Instead, it has an exhaust ability. Exhaust means we can only activate this ability once during the game. For 4 generic mana, we reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal 2 lands and put those lands onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom in a random order, and we put a 1/1 counter on the Serpent. So that's 4 mana to find 2 lands, and we don't get to choose which lands they are. They're just whatever the 2 next lands in our library are, which could be dual lands, which means this is better than Explosive Vegetation. It doesn't cost 3 and a green, it costs 4 generic, so that's easier to hit. It finds 2 lands, we don't get to choose them, but we do get whichever great lands we find next in our library, and this puts a counter on the Serpent. So all of that to say, 2 mana gives us a 1/1 flyer with death touch, so a terrific blocker that eventually we can exhaust, again, only once during the game, to get the equivalent of a better Explosive Vegetation and make it into a 2/2 flyer with death touch. And then, when it dies, with Brenard in play, we bring it back, and it's the same as it was, just as a token. It's still a 1/1 flyer, still has death touch, but this is a new creature. It's the token copy, it's not the original object in the game, which means we can exhaust the copy as well and get to do all this again and make it a 2/2 as well. Great. I really think this is a cool card in this deck. Next up, we've seen the Unlucky Cabbage Merchant lets us rampant growth, or have a rampant growth effect whenever we sacrifice a food, which again, Sakura Tribe Elder, if Ygra's in play, if we sack it to rampant growth, it will trigger the Unlucky Cabbage Merchant because we sacrificed a food. Neat. Burnished Heart is next. I love this card. This is 3 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature elk. Look at this elk. That says, for 3 and sack it, we get 2 Explosive Vegetation. Search for 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So Explosive Veggies is 4 and 3. It's 3 and a green. There we go. So this is cheaper than that, but not in aggregate. But it doesn't require green, specifically, and we can pay this mana over the course of multiple turns. And with Brenard in play, we sacrifice this, get our 2 lands into play, exile it from the graveyard with Brenard, and make a 1/1 copy of it. It's not as good as a 2/2, but either way, Brenard's in play, so now if this wasn't a food, it is now, so now it's a 3/3, so it's actually better. And we can sack it again, sack the token if we want, and get more lands. Love it. We've seen our Heaped Harvest. It enters, or it enters and rampant growths us, and when it's sacrificed, it rampant growths us again. Ignis enters and lets us look at the top 6 and put a land from among them on the battlefield tapped. Ninja Pizza makes us a food at the start of our second main phase on every one of our turns, but lets our foods tap like treasures, tap, sack, and add 1 mana of any color. We have not seen Invasion of Zendikar. This is a siege, a battle. The way this works is when this enters, we choose an opponent to protect it, and everyone at the table other than that opponent can attack it, as though it were a planeswalker that opponent controlled. But they don't control it, we control it, they're just protecting it. Like if they had a planeswalker that people were attacking, they can block whenever we or anyone else decides to attack Invasion of Zendikar. Every point of damage that we do that someone does to the invasion takes away one of these 3 defense counters on it. And when it loses all of them, it gets exiled, and we get to cast it transformed. It has no casting cost, we do it for free, It's just a triggered ability that happens when it is defeated. So yeah, pretty sweet little effect for us. Usually no one attacks this other than the person who controls it, which would be us. And if you've seen these on Arena, it likes to put them on the opponent's side of the board, just to represent like you're attacking that direction for visual clarity. But in Commander, I just leave them on my playmat because there's no reason to put them on an opponent's playmat when they can't do anything with it other than block for it, and we might need to read it. So yeah, in any case, when it comes in, we get to search our library for up to 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So that is Explosive Vegetation for 3 and a green. So this is Explosive Veggies with upside. It gives us the ability to attack it, which maybe we want to do with Ygra as a huge creature, meaning our opponents are, unless they want to chump block, they're not going to block us attacking our own battle because they're not losing anything if they let it through. And their creatures are likely to die to our huge cat anyway, if they were to block. And so we can easily defeat this, and then we can cast it transformed from exile as Awakened Skyclave. This is a 4/4 elemental with vigilance and haste that says as long as this creature is on the battlefield, it's a land in addition to its other types, and we can tap to add 1 mana of any color. So it's a land, it has haste, it taps for mana, and it's got vigilance. All of this is pretty great. Now I know what you're thinking. What happens if this card gets killed when we have Brenard in play? Well, Brenard, we'll look again, says, or Brenard, I'm going to pronounce his name both ways as I have been this whole time. It says whenever another non-token creature you control dies. So our Invasion of Zendikar, when it's flipped, it is a creature, an elemental. I know you're thinking, but this is the back side of it. Yes, but this is the creature that's dying. We are making a copy of it with the changes that Brenard makes, which makes it a 1/1 food golem artifact creature. So this is going to come back into play at, rather not come back into play, but a token will be made that is a 1/1 artifact creature food elemental golem called Awakened Skyclave with vigilance and haste. It will be a land, and it will tap for 1 mana of any color. That's what the token will look like. It will not give us the front side of the card, because Brenard specifically says when a creature dies, not when a card is put into our graveyard. We make a copy of a creature, not a copy of a card. So yeah, Awakened Skyclave is what we will get as a copy when it comes back. And in any case, this is a 4 mana, so when it comes back, if we have both Ygra and Brenard in play, it will be a 6/6, not a 4/4. And that's pretty good. We get a sweet additional creature in play that is also a food with Ygra in play when it comes in after we defeat the Evasion of Zendikar. So that's sort of our 46th creature in the deck. Yeah. Next, we've seen Knight of Sweet's Revenge, lets us tap all of our foods for green. We've seen our Sad Robot, which lets us rampant growth when it enters. We have not seen the Silverback Elder. Now, I know you're thinking, this is a triple green creature in our 4-color deck. How hard is that to get to? It ultimately doesn't end up being that hard. Again, we're running a lot of ramp in this deck. But plus we're heavier on our green pips or our green production than everything else. But this card just works great for us and helps us with that ramp. It is a 5/7 Ape Shaman for 2 and triple green that says whenever you cast a creature spell. So it is a cast trigger, not an enters trigger, something that's worth remembering when we have creatures re-enter, or quote re-enter, by making a token copy of them with Brenard. That's not going to give a trigger on the Elder. But we have lots of other creatures, so this is going to trigger off of every time we cast one. When we do, we have 3 options. We can destroy an artifact or enchantment, which again, if Ygra's in play, destroying artifacts is destroying creatures. We can look at the top 5 cards of our library and put a land from among them on the battlefield tapped and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So we get a ramp effect with our many lands in the deck, or we can gain 4 life. Gaining life can be helpful to us, especially with our instance of Frodo in the deck, who cares about us having gained at least 3 life when we go to combat attacking with Frodo. So that's relevant, but 4 life is also just fine to have if we're not destroying an artifact, enchantment, or artifact creature, or ramping ourselves, which is usually what we want to do if we don't have anything to destroy. but gaining 4 life, if we've got Frodo in play, can also be a great choice. This is absolutely worth $5 and goes in so many green decks. Yeah, it's worth investing in one of these, even if you expect not to play this deck forever, since it's a Pride deck. You know, I think the Pride decks are great to keep together. I'm very lucky to have play groups that don't mind you playing Rule 0 decks most of the time. But yeah, if you're the kind of person who's thinking, oh, I want to make this for Pride, but I don't think I'll keep it together afterwards, most of these cards, or many of these cards, even in this food theme, are good in putting other decks if they're worth a little bit of money. Silverback Elder at the top of that list, in my opinion. And I think this is the second most expensive card on the deck, second only to Ygra itself. So yeah. Anyway, that is our acceleration section. Let's talk about interaction now, which, as usual, I've just tagged as removal. So we're running Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. White is our second most represented color in this deck. This is why. Or I guess not these two colors, or not these two cards, but it is, so I am fine running both of these cards. As I usually say, these cards have one difference, but are otherwise the same. They are both a single white mana for an instant that exiles a target creature and gives that creature's controller a kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives that creature's controller life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth, if they want to. It's a may. So both of these are very strong effects. Both of them are unconditional, single mana, instant speed, exile effects for creatures. Yeah, put them in your deck. Next we have Tear Asunder. This is 1 and a green for an instant that exiles target artifact or enchantment. It's already pretty good, especially since artifact removal hits our opponent's creatures if Ygra's out. And it has kicker for one and a black, meaning if we pay a total of 2, a black and a green, instead we can exile target non-land permanent. So we can hit anything that's not a land, even if Ygra's not in play. Great flexibility for Tear Asunder. I run this in basically every one of my decks that has black and green. It's just a strong removal spell. Next we have Armix Filigree Thrasher from Commander Legends. This is 2 and a black for a 3/2 legendary artifact creature, Golem. So again, with Brenard in play, even without Ygra, this is a 5/4 for 3, since it's a Golem. It says whenever Armix attacks, we can discard a card, and when we do, target defending creature defending player controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts we control plus the number of artifact cards in our graveyard. This may not be a huge number. This, with Ygra in play, is going to be big. At the very least, this is going to be a -1/-1 because Armix itself is an artifact. So yeah, being able to turn any card in our hand into a removal spell by discarding it to give this effect whenever this guy attacks, that's just very strong, especially since he is often a 5/4 attacker. And he has Partner, which is not relevant for this deck, but nice to know. We like partners. Next, we've seen Lauren. Lauren can blow up an artifact or an enchantment, and with Ygra in play, creatures are artifacts. Trigon Predator is in the deck for the same reason. 1, a green, and a blue for a 2/3 flying beast that says when it deals combat damage to a player, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment that player controls. All of our naturalize effects and our disenchant effects are so strong in this deck with Ygra that we might as well run them, especially ones that we couldn't run in a normal Ygra deck, since Ygra is green and black, but Bernard gives us blue. So yeah, nice. Banished to Another Universe, we've already seen as a removal effect that gets a discount for all of our historic permanents. Next, we're running a Planeswalker. It's Kaya the Inexorable. And I usually run this art for Kaya. You could save, 50 cents or 60 cents or something if you run the regular art, but I think this art is so amazing. I love Kaya, so yeah, this is what I do. 3, a white, and a black gives us a 5 loyalty legendary Kaya Planeswalker that says +1, put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature. Ghost form counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by Kaya. And that creature gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So it doesn't even really need the counter. We could just say, Kaya could say, up to 1 target token creature gains this ability. It is not tied to the ghost form counter. The ghost form counter is just there to remind us. Something worth recognizing if someone else says, haha, remove all the counters from your creatures. Anything we've targeted with Kaya's +1 still has this text, even if the ghost form counter is gone. Just worth noting. But what it does is terrific, because if one of our creatures dies or goes to exile, instead of it going to the graveyard or exile, we put it back in our hand, and we get a 1/1 spirit. Now, this effect is a non-bow with Brenard, because when Brenard triggers, when our creatures die, we want to be able to exile them from the graveyard. So if we let Kaya's ghost form delayed trigger go off first, or resolve first, it's going to put that creature into our hand, so we cannot exile it from the graveyard. And we do get that 1/1 spirit, but we don't get to make the copy of it with Brenard. If we do it the other way, though, we could have this creature die, then Bernard's ability resolves first, we exile it, we make a 1/1 food golem copy of it, and we don't get to do this. I think we still get the spirit, maybe? I may be wrong about that, but in either case, we won't get the effect of this, because it says when that creature dies or is put into exile, the creature isn't being put into exile with Brenard, the creature card is, so it's a little bit of a non-bow. We get to choose which way we want to go with this, but it's pretty nice either way, because we get the value from the option. You know, we can say maybe put this on our commander and get a spirit and put our commander back in our hand. That saves Ygra or saves Brenard, you know, either way. We can also use Kaya -3 and exile a non-land permanent. It doesn't even have to be a non-land permanent of our opponents. We can hit one of our own things. Why would we do that? Probably we won't. But if we want to, the reason we might is because if we get Kaya to -7, we get an emblem that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among cards you own in exile without paying its mana cost. So even if it didn't have this text, it would still be very powerful. All of the stuff that was legendary, that died and went to our graveyard, that we exiled with Brenard in order to make a 1/1 token food golem creature copy of it, we exiled those creature cards. Every one of them that's legendary, we can cast it again with Kaya's ultimate, with this emblem. Just very, very powerful. And we don't even have to pay for it. Amazing. So these ghost form counters feed into this other ability and feed our loyalty amount so that we can do so much cool stuff with Kaya. Just really like her in this deck. We've seen our Silverback Elder. Lets us naturalize something when we cast a creature spell. Vorinclex technically is removal, because on the backside, the Grand Evolution's 3rd chapter lets all of our creatures fight another creature we don't control for a single generic mana until end of turn. We've seen Angel of the Ruins. When it enters, we get to exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments, and those artifacts might be creatures if Ygra's in play. And finally, we talked about the 3 green pips on Silverback Elder. Well, we've got it on Kogla as well. Kogla the Titanate, a card that I think is so good. It's just so much fun. This is 3 and triple green for a 7/6 legendary ape. Legendary, so Kaya can get it back from exile if we need to. That says when it enters, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. It says up to 1. It's not 1, so we don't have to have Kogla fight, which we may not do if Kogla is coming in as a token copy of the actual Kogla, because we exiled actual Kogla after he died using Bernard's trigger, and we've made a 1/1 food golem version of Kogla. But we might still have him fight, because he's coming in from Bernard, so he's a 1/1 getting +2/2, so we can have him fight something that's an X2 or less. That's fine. Or an X3 if we don't mind the token dying either. And when Kogla attacks, we destroy target artifact or enchantment if any player controls, which means we can we've got a naturalize effect, which we can hit creatures with if we need to, assuming Ygra's in play. However, Kogla also says, for 1 and a green, we can return target human we control to its owner's hand, and Kogla gains indestructible until end of turn. This is sweet because we have 11 different humans in the deck, including Brenard. So we can use this to protect Brenard by activating it, giving Kogla indestructible, but particularly returning Brenard or any of our other humans back to our hand so that we can recast them again if we need to. Or we can do the same thing to protect Kogla, since Kogla gains indestructible from it. It's even cool that we can do this at instant speed because when Kogla enters, it fights something. Well, we might say, I want to kill your 10-7 creature. Kogla comes in as a 7-6, so he can kill that thing, but they'll both die. Well, Kogla enters. With this enters trigger on the stack, we activate Kogla's ability and bounce one of our humans, maybe Brenard. Kogla will gain indestructible, and then its enters trigger will resolve. We fight that 10-7, the 10-7 dies from our 7 damage, but because Kogla's indestructible, he doesn't die. Then we just recast our human that we bounced, either that turn or later. I know it's 6 mana to cast this, and then 2 more, so a total of 8 in order to do this trick, but it's a pretty good trick. And we can do this part every turn Kogla's attacking, or whenever we need to protect one of our humans. Yeah, just very nice. So that covers our removal section, our interaction section. We are running one Wrath in this deck, and it's a really cool one. It's Nevinyrral. This is Nevinyrral Urborg Tyrant is 3, a white, a blue, and a black, which is the same cost as our Urza we saw earlier, for a 3/6 legendary zombie wizard. This is a creature from Commander Legends as a reference to Nevinyrral's Disc, which is a very old Magic card. It might have been an alpha. That is an artifact that lets you destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments if you sacrifice it. It's, if you're interested, it's Larry Niven backwards. The sci-fi fantasy writer, just so you know. So, Nevinyrral is a 3/6 with hexproof from artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. That's pretty solid. And when he enters, we make a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for each creature that died this turn. So there's usually a way for us to contrive that into happening, even if it's just attacking and killing a bunch of our opponent's creatures, and some of our own maybe, and then Nevinyrral comes in, and we make some zombies. That seems good. They are tapped, but we're going to get to use them later. And they are creatures, so with Ygra in play, they are also foods. And when Nevinyrral dies, we can pay a generic mana to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So this is a sweet way of doing this. If we have a way to give our creatures haste, or if Nevinyrral's just in play already, we can always just sacrifice him to himself as a food if Ygra's in play. When we do, we pay the extra 1, and we destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, and that hits our whole board and everyone else's board. But because this is assuming we have Ygra and Brenard in play, every one of our creatures that died, except for Ygra, was an artifact. Or rather, was a, what am I trying to say? I guess what I'm trying to say is this. With Brenard in play, we can have all of those things that die come back in, except for Nevinyrral itself, because Nevinyrral will have died first. So if we want to make a copy of it, we can. Oh yeah, we can stack it. That's right. Yeah, pardon me. This is not that hard, but I'm making it hard. So check this out. Let's say we've got a bunch of creatures in play, including both of our commanders and Nevinyrral. Nevinyrral dies. Let's say we've cracked him like a food. So he dies, and 2 abilities go on the stack. The ability we activated, which is us gaining 3 life, and his ability, which lets us pay 1 generic mana. But a 3rd ability goes on the stack as well, and that's Brenard's ability. Brenard's ability that lets us pay 1 and exile him from our graveyard to make a 1/1 copy of him that is a food golem. We stack this in such a way so that Nevinyrral's own death trigger resolves first. It does, we pay the 1, and it wipes the board. We destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. That includes Brenard. But if Ygra was in play, it'll also kill Ygra. And Brenard sees Ygra die, and we get a chance to exile Ygra from our graveyard and make a 1/1 copy of Ygra, which is totally fine. We'll get a bunch of different triggers from Brenard for all of our creatures except for Brenard himself. We can exile all of them from our graveyard if we want to, get a 1/1 food golem of each of them. That includes Ygra, which makes all of our creatures food again. Not that they weren't already, they were already food, but just nice to be able to have Ygra back in play. And when we exile Ygra from our graveyard, we can then put Ygra into our command zone to be recast normally. All of that said, all of our opponents' boards have been wiped, but we have the same board we had before, minus Brenard and Nevinyrral. It's just that all of our creatures are 1/1 tokens and our foods. That's after Brenard's triggers have resolved, thanks to us using Nevinyrral's trigger. Then we resolve Bernard's trigger from Nevinyrral's death and bring Nevinyrral back as a 1/1, or make a copy of Nevinyrral as a 1/1. Nevinyrral will enter and make a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for every creature of ours and everyone else's that died this turn. We get all of those. Finally, we gain the 3 life from having cracked Nevinyrral as a food. So yeah, we can absolutely destroy the board, get everything back of our own, including Nevinyrral, as a 1/1 copy, as long as we're willing to let everything else get exiled, other than Bernard himself. But we just put Bernard back in the command zone, rather than letting him stay in the graveyard the way we did with Ygra, so that we could exile Ygra from the graveyard, make a token copy of it, and then put it in the command zone. So we've got both our commanders in the command zone, the rest of our board is back as 1/1s, and everyone else's boards are wiped. And that cost us a total of 3 mana. The 1 to pay for Nevinyrral's death trigger, and the 2 to crack him and kill him, sacrifice him in the first place as a food. So we've got all of our creatures back, other than our commanders, except we have a copy of Ygra as a 1/1, plus a whole bunch of zombies. So yeah, this seems like Magical Christmas Land, but it's really not that hard to make happen in this deck, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah. That is our 1 Wrath, so that covers our support section. We have several other sections that supplement our game plan, many of which we've seen the cards from already, but we're going to go through them now. We're going to start with our sacrifice outlets. These are all cards that give us ways to sacrifice creatures and or foods for more value. So for example, Gilded Goose, we can tap and sacrifice a food to make mana. We can sacrifice our creatures who are foods with Ygra if we want, or just our food tokens. Banquet Guests, we can pay 2 and sack a food to give it indestructible until end of turn. Sam lets us sacrifice 3 foods to bring a historic card from our graveyard back to our hand. The Goose Mother has an attack trigger, letting us sacrifice a food to draw a card. Bristlebud Farmer also has an attack trigger, letting us sacrifice a food to mill 3 and put a permanent from among those into our hand, so kind of similar. Cauldron of Essence lets us sacrifice a creature to return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. Greta lets us sacrifice foods to put counters on creatures or to draw cards. Ninja Pizza lets us sacrifice foods because all of our foods are able to be sacrificed for mana, since they're kind of like treasures. Guillaume lets us sacrifice a food to make a creature indestructible and to tap it. And Prime Speaker Vanifar lets us sacrifice creatures in order to Birthing Pod into another creature. Something I should mention here, however, sacrificing food with Guillaume to make a creature indestructible and then tap it is also something we can do politically. We can say, hey, I know your creature is being targeted with a removal spell. If I sacrifice a food, your creature, because Guillaume does not say target creature you control, I can give them indestructible until end of turn, and then it'll save them. Will you leave me alone for a turn cycle if I do that? Or will you be my friend for the next 2 turns, or whatever it may be? A lot of players will say yes to that, especially if we're sacrificing a food token or one of our creatures and we're getting value out of that as well. But we can also use this repeatedly to save our creatures, to save other players' creatures, whether or not they made a deal with us, because maybe we want their creatures to stick around since they're doing a lot of damage to our opponents for us. But we can also just sacrifice food, and it doesn't matter that we're making creatures that our opponents control indestructible if all we care about is the fact that we want them tapped. So this lets us sneak in. If we're attacking an opponent, maybe they've got 3 creatures that are able to block. We just pay 3 mana and sack 3 foods, tap all of those creatures, and who cares if they're indestructible? We just attack in, they can't block us since they're tapped. Neat. Yeah, Guillaume is sweet. And that is our outlets section. Next, we have a way to pump up our creatures. We've seen all but one of these. So Yoshin Dissident has Artifact Fall, put a counter on one of your creatures. Seems good. Greta, we can use her ability to sack a food to put a 1/1 counter on a creature at sorcery speed. Knight of Sweet's Revenge, we can crack for 7 mana to give all of our creatures a power and toughness boost equal to the number of foods we control. Mazarek puts a counter on all of our creatures whenever anyone sacrifices any permanent. Motivated Pony gives all of our creatures that are attacking +1/+1 when it attacks, but if a food entered under our control, it's instead +3/+3, and we untap those creatures. And Vorinclex lets us pump up our creatures with the second chapter of the Grand Evolution by letting us put 7 1/1 counters among creatures we control. The last card is our other Urza card. This is Urza, Prince of Krug. 2, a white and a blue, gives us a 2/3 legendary human artificer that gives all of our artifact creatures +2/+2. So this stacks with what Brenard is giving all of our artifact creatures, all of our food/golems, and anything that's just an artifact creature that isn't a food or golem, because maybe Ygra is not in play, is going to get that +2/+2 as well. But with both of our commanders in play and Urza, all of our non-Ygra creatures are are getting +4/+4. So even our 1/1s are coming in as 5/5s, triggering Garruk's Uprising and giving us cards. Very, very nice for us. In addition, Urza lets us pay 6 generic mana and make a token that's a copy of target artifact we control, except that it's a 1/1 soldier in addition to its other types. So this is kind of a way for us to make the same sort of tokens that Brenard would make without us losing that creature. It's not quite the same because those creatures are not food golems. They are just 1/1 soldiers. And we can only target with this ability if those creatures are artifacts, but of course, Ygra makes all of our creatures other than itself into artifacts. So Urza can help us out in a lot of ways. This pay 6 ability is expensive, but it gets us a second Motivated Pony, or a second, maybe not yet Mazarek, but like Yoshin Dissident. These are not, this is not an expensive ability, but it is a powerful one, and we can double it up with Urza. Besides, that Yoshin Dissident, as long as we've got Ygra in play, is a 3/3. If we have Brenard in play as well, it's a 5/5 with Urza in play. So yeah, very nice for us. That is our pump section. Let's talk now about our ways to make our creatures evasive. We have a few of them. Frodo makes our ring bearer, or makes a creature into a ring bearer because it lets the ring tempt us, which means that creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Usually pretty good for this deck. Our Urza Chief Artificer gives all of our artifact creatures menace. Herd Heirloom can give one of our creatures with power 4 or greater trample until end of turn, plus curiosity, and Garruk's Uprising gives our whole board trample. Finally, we have Cyberdrive Awakener. This is 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature construct with flying that gives all of our other artifact creatures flying, which means everything but Ygra when Ygra's in play. And when the Cyberdrive Awakener enters, each non-creature artifact we control, we don't get a choice, it just becomes a 4/4 artifact creature until end of turn. So all of our food tokens lying around are suddenly angels, basically, until end of turn. So yeah, this is a sweet way for us to have a suddenly flying board and maybe swing in for an alpha strike and just kill 1 or 2 or maybe all of our opponents. But even if not, having our creatures fly for as long as the Awakener's in play is very good for us. And if someone destroys our Awakener, well, we just exile it with Brenard and bring it back, or bring in a 1/1 copy of it, which will get its the same interest trigger and give itself and all of our other artifact creatures flying. That is our evasion section. Let's talk now about our protection section. These are ways to keep us and our things safe. So we've seen all but one of these. Kutzil protects us by making our opponents unable to cast spells during our turn. Guillaume can protect a creature, whether it's ours or not, by making it indestructible when we sacrifice a food. Bronze Guardian gives all of our other artifacts we control Ward 2, and Kogla can bounce a human, protecting itself or that human whenever we need it to. Selfless Spirit is last. This is a 2/1 flying spirit cleric for 1 and a white that says sack this creature, and creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn. All of our creatures. That's great. Sometimes we want our creatures to die, sometimes we'd rather them not. Selfless Spirit, when it dies, we can exile it with Brenard and bring it back as a 1/1 version, or bring a token copy in. When I say bring it back, I mean make the token copy by exiling this from our graveyard. So we have the ability to sacrifice it again, or sacrifice the new one, the copy, for that same effect again if we want to. And if Ygra's in play, we've sacrificed it, so we've had a food go to the graveyard. We get counters on Ygra, we get a reward for any of our other cards that care, or from any of our cards that care about us sacrificing food. Yeah, pretty solid way to protect ourselves. That is our protection section. Let's talk now about how we have recursion in this deck. We've seen all of these. There are ways for us to get things back from our graveyard. Revive the Shire lets us put a target permanent card from our graveyard into our hand. Sam lets us sack 3 foods to bring a target historic card from our graveyard back to our hand. Cauldron of Essence lets us sack a creature in order to bring a creature back from the graveyard to the battlefield. And Kaya lets us put ghost form counters on things, which lets us, when those creatures die or go to exile, go back to our hand. Plus we get spirits, and technically, the ability to cast things for free from exile, or from our hand or from a graveyard with Kaya's ultimate. Less likely to happen, us getting to an ultimate on a planeswalker, but it's a recursive effect as well. So that covers our recursion. Next, we want to go over the fact that we have a little bit of drain in this deck. We've already seen all of them, just ways to take away our opponent's life without combat. Marionette Apprentice makes each opponent lose a life whenever one of our creatures or artifacts goes to the graveyard from the battlefield. Cauldron of Essence drains our opponents for 1 whenever one of our creatures dies. And Pact Doll Terror has an artifact fall ability for itself and every other artifact, which also drains each opponent for 1. Sweet. That is our drain effect section. Next, we have a synergy section. These are cards that care about the number of things that we have that aren't simply just the number of artifacts in the way that Affinity and Cranial plating do in those particular ways. So Armix counts the number of artifacts we control and artifacts in our graveyard, as that is the amount it will give -X/-X to a creature defending player controls when it attacks and we discard a card. Weird way to say that, but there you go. It counts up those artifacts. Knight of Sweet's Revenge counts up the number of foods we have when we sack it to give all of our creatures a power and toughness boost equal to that number. And Sam is in this section not because he counts things, but because he has the special ability to give all of our foods a cost reduction on their activated abilities of 1 generic mana. So that covers our synergy section. Next, we have a section of our golems. I just wanted to point out that these are the 4 golems that we have that can get that power and toughness boost from Brenard, even if we don't have Ygra in play. So Tough Cookie becomes a 2-mana 4/4, Armix a 3-mana 5/4, Sad Robot a 4-mana 4/4, and Bronze Guardian a 5-mana star +2 7. There you go. Just nice to be able to see that these are golems and get that bonus, even if we don't have Ygra in play, making all of our creatures into foods. Yeah. Finally, we have a tokens section. These are all the cards that we've already seen before, but there are ways for us to make more tokens. The only one we haven't seen before is God Eternal Oketra. This is 3 and double white for a 3/6 legendary zombie god with double strike. So a double striking 3/6 is already good. It says whenever we cast a creature spell, we make a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. So these are sweet tokens to be able to have. God Eternal Oketra on its own does not trigger Garruk's Uprising, but all of these zombie warriors do. And of course, being 4 mana, they also qualify for Herd Heirloom, that sort of deal. But if we have both of our commanders in play, this is a 5/8. Just very powerful at making 6/6 every time, 6/6s every time we cast a creature spell. I know Oketra has a bow in this art. Oketra is not an archer and does not have reach. Ask the War of the Spark people, or I guess the Amonkhet people. In any case, it also says when God Eternal Oketra dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, we may put it into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. So this does not work the way you want it to with Brenard. This is a death trigger, just like Brenard's is. So whichever one we do first, or we resolve first, will win. If we decide to exile it from our graveyard with Brenard, it's not being exiled from the battlefield, so it will just stay in exile. If we decide to put it 3rd from the top of our library when it dies, Brenard will then look to try and exile it from the graveyard and won't be able to because it won't be there anymore. However, being able to keep getting God Eternal Oketra back and make more creatures that are strong 4/4s with vigilance, and just being a 3/6 double strike, or maybe a 5/8 double strike if both of our commanders in play, is just powerful for us. So yeah. Love God Eternal Oketra. I like all the God Eternals from War of the Spark. But beyond that, Marionette Apprentice has Fabricate for 1, so we can have it come in with a 1/1 servo. Tough Cookie makes us a food And even though that it's itself not a token creature, we can animate our non-token artifacts, including that food, so it can kind of fits into this section in that way. Urza can make copies of our artifacts that are 1/1 soldiers, which can be any of our creatures, thanks to Ygra. Kaya gives us these 1/1 flying spirits whenever we have our creatures with ghost form counters on them die or go to exile. I guess, again, it's not the ghost form counter that does it, it's just that's linked there for a reminder. Nevinyrral makes us tapped 2/2 zombies whenever it enters based on the number of creatures that died this turn. And Urza Chief Artificer makes us constructs that have +1/+1 for each artifact we control at each of our end steps. And that covers our token section and all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our lands now. So we are mostly green, and this mix looks crazy, but it actually works terrific for us. We have 8 forests, 2 islands, 3 plains, 2 swamps. We are actually heavy on all 3 of these colors with these numbers, but I did not want to only go down to a single basic for black or for blue particularly, because if we did, and we have one of our many rampant growth effects go looking for that color because we really need it, and it happens to be that we already milled our only basic of that color, I wanted there to be at least one other that was a possibility for us. We are running, even though Ygra is from Bloomborough, Brenard is from Wilds of Eldraine, so we're running the Wilds of Eldraine arts for us here. 15 basics seems like a low number to me. If you are watching my videos for the first time and it seems like a high number for you, no, it's not. This is an appropriate number for us, and we're going to see more of the reasons for that in a moment. We are running all 6 check lands in our colors. Check lands are lands that work like Glacial Fortress. They tap for 1 of 2 colors, and they enter tapped unless we control a land of the types associated with those colors. So for Glacial Fortress, a plains or an island because it taps for white or blue. So it seems like these would not be very good lands, even though they are inexpensive compared to most lands. Other than Drowned Catacomb, not super cheap right now, but I'm waiting for Reality Fracture because I believe we're going to get a bunch of slow lands that are going to help this out. At least more lands that are the allied colors. In any case, Glacial Fortress is white and blue, so I know you're looking and saying, well, we only have 5 lands in the deck that would make it come in untapped, because that's our only plains and islands. But not so. It does not say basic. So we have a bunch of dual-typed lands, most of which are going to be able to give us, or at least half of which, are going to be either plains or islands. I think it's most of which, in fact. That's how it works. So it's going to make all of our check lands able to come in untapped as untapped duels. It happens a lot more often than you think it would in terms of the math. If you want to upgrade these, I might suggest the slow lands. They're getting reprinted right now, the enemy colors at least, in Secrets of Strixhaven. And like I said a moment ago, they're probably going to get the allied colors reprinted in Reality Fracture, if not sooner. Those don't require us to have a specific type of land in play. They just require us to have 2 other lands of any type to come in order for them to come in untapped. But they are more expensive, even though the prices are going down. So I think the check lands are the best budget option that is still very effective in this deck. So next up, we have these 5 fixing lands. Of course, we're running Command Tower. This is the same text as Arcane Signet. It's an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, white, blue, black, or green. An untapped quad land, of course we're running this. We would run this if it was a tapped quad land, which is Path of Ancestry. This is a tap land with the same text as Command Tower, but it also says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. Well, our commanders are a human artificer and an elemental cat. We don't have any other elementals in this deck, and we only have 1 cat, the Kutzil Malamut exemplar from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. But we do have 10 other humans, several of which are artificers. So that means we have 11 cards in this deck that aren't our commanders that can get a scry off of Path of Ancestry, plus, of course, our commanders share creature types with themselves. So a total of 13 cards in our deck can give us a scry off of Path of Ancestry, and even if not, it's a 4 mana tap land. Of course we're going to run this. We're also running Exotic Orchard. If Command Tower is the land version of Arcane Signet, this is the land version of Felwar Stone. It taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce, and it comes in untapped. So it's everything I said about the Felwar Stone is just as relevant here, but in addition, if an opponent is also running an Exotic Orchard, then their orchard sees our other lands as well, and our orchard sees their orchard, which means, by the transitive property, our orchard can tap for 1 mana of any color that our lands can produce. Since their orchard can produce those colors, so can ours. Just a really cool interaction and great for a deck that has a lot of colors in it. We're running Blighted Woodland. I often run Myriad Landscape, but this is a deck that has green in it, with green as its sort of primary color. So this is a little bit better for us in my opinion. This is a land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless. Or we can pay 3 and a green, tap and sack it, and Explosive Vegetation, which is the cost of 3 and a green. So we are tapping 5 lands, or 5 mana sources, I should say, 3 and a green plus the woodland, and we're losing the woodland, but we're getting 2 lands in play. So we're turning 1 land drop into 2 basics in play, and they don't even have to be the same type the way that Myriad Landscape does. So this is a slow form of acceleration, but it is acceleration for us, and it can do some pretty solid fixing. Finally, we're running Temple of the False God, which seems like, I know it's not everyone's favorite land, but it is a solid land for a deck that requires so much mana as ours. We do not love the fact that it only makes colorless mana, because this taps for 2 colorless mana, but only if we control 5 or more lands, which means 4 lands other than the temple itself. So while this is not helping us fix our mana, it is helping us accelerate, which can really be helpful to us when we want to double spell as much as we can in this deck. And its acceleration does not work for us early game, since early game this doesn't tap for mana at all. But getting acceleration in the mid game and the late game is maybe not as valuable as early game, but it's still valuable, it's still good. And this kind of effect, the power level of this, matches the power level of the kind of decks I built for this channel. So it's an easy replacement if you want to just put a different basic in or a different non-basic in instead of this, but I think the Temple of the False God is a good card, and it's worth putting in these decks. Next, we are running only 1 Pain land. I wanted to run all 6 of the dual-typed Pain lands, but Spire of Industry does what we need even better. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, but if we tap it and pay 1 life, we make a mana of any color. We just can't do that unless we control the artifact. We have, in this deck, 16 artifacts. That's 1/6 of our deck, as well as any of our creatures that die and Brenard exiles to make a copy of. Those copies are artifact tokens. We have a bunch of creatures that make food tokens. We have lots of ways to have artifacts in play, and the biggest of them is if Ygra is in play, all we have to do is control any other creature, and it's a food, which means it's an artifact, which means this taps for 1 mana of any color, as long as we pay a life for it. And as I often say with decks that run Pain lands, would you pay a life to cast an extra spell? I would. Because if you don't need colored mana, you can tap Spire of Industry for colorless mana to cast your spells. But if you need colored mana in order to cast a spell, meaning if you can't cast it without paying colored mana for it, then the difference between casting that spell and not is paying a life to tap the Spire of Industry. Which means, over the course of the game, if you do that 3 or 4 times, you've cast 3 or 4 more spells, and it's cost you 3 or 4 more life. 1 life every turn. 100% worth it every time. Even if it kills you, the likelihood that it will kill you is lower each time because you're casting more spells. And again, if you don't need the colored mana, just tap it for colorless. Next, we are running all 6 of these Tango lands. I usually like to run the Tango lands with the Bicycle lands, but I was running the Bicycle lands for a while. Bicycle lands are similar to these. I'll just explain the Tangos first, I guess. These are lands that have 2 basic types, so they tap for the colors associated with those types, and they intertap unless we control 2 or more basic lands, which means a lot of the times it seems like these would be tapped lands, since we only have 15 basics in our library. But with the content of our deck having so many rampant growth effects, not all of which are Farseek. Some of our rampant growth effects are just rampant growth, or heaped harvest, or other things that do that same effect. Getting those basics in play, plus also just drawing them and playing them, means it's very easy for us to get 2 or more basic lands in play. And it doesn't matter what kind of basics they are, as long as they are basic, which makes all of these Tango lands into untapped duels. Very strong, in addition to being untapped duels that have dual land types. So like I mentioned earlier, if we have our Glacial Fortress that is a check land that comes in tapped unless we control an island or a plains, well, here's 3 plains and 2 more cards that are also islands. There's only 1 card in our Tango lands that does not let the Glacial Fortress come in untapped, which means there's 5 cards in the Tango lands for each of our check lands that lets it come in untapped. So this can be great. That's 5 lands plus the 5 basics. So 20 lands. That's not exactly how it works out to be, but it's 15 to 20 lands for each check land. So these just sort of help each other. And these are just very strong. The bicycle lands are similar to this, but they always come in tapped. However, they have cycling for 2 generic mana. I really like the ability to cycle my lands because maybe I'm desperate for a card, or in this deck, more likely, it's late game and I've drawn a bicycle land, and I just don't need a land at that point. So I cycle it away for another card draw. However, in this deck, because we have 4 colors and we want to make sure as often as possible we can not just fix our mana, but do so in a way that lets us tap right away, having the ability for the Tango lands to come in untapped is better overall than running bicycle lands. But you could, of course, mix and match. So yeah, if you want to upgrade these, I mean, obviously there's the shock lands. That's not a terrible option. If you care about running dual-typed lands that are maybe tapped, the Surveil lands are also a good option. All of these are much more expensive, of course, but I think the Tango lands really make this deck come together. So yeah. We are running all 4 of our tri-lands as well. These are the only tri-lands we can run in our colors. These are all lands that just come in tapped and make 1 of 3 colors. They don't have the basic types or anything, but yeah, just a tap land that fixes our mana for all but 1 of our colors, and each one of them does that. These are just very, very strong for us. So they're the best tap lands we've got, essentially, other than, I guess, Path of Ancestry. Yeah. We only have 1 more land. It's Demolition Field. This is our only utility land in the deck because I cared so much about making sure we have our colors. As I often say, in the decks that I build, these are of a power level that's really meant for pods that are people who want to play like a bracket 2 game, or even a bracket 1. And usually these pods don't smile upon the idea of land destruction or any kind of mana denial. And that's fair. Not everyone's looking for that in their commander game. But sometimes you have to deal with a land that's either helping its controller's game plan more than a normal land does, or it's hurting our ability to execute our game plan. For example, a Rogue's Passage in a Voltron Commander deck can really make that Voltron Commander able to swing in unblockably and just kill us. Or a Glacial Chasm or a Maze of Ith in a deck that's built around combat, particularly from our big cat commander, can slow us down and make it so we can't execute our win cons. Those kinds of lands become threats, and this is a game of threats and answers. So we have to have 1 answer in our deck that can deal with lands, and Demolition Field is the best one of those presently, and it's in Foundations, and it's like 15 cents. So this is an untapped land that taps for colorless, but we can also pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and that opponent gets to then search for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so do we. So we are replacing our Demolition Field, and they get to replace their non-basic that we destroyed, so neither player is down a land. We even have lands that are untapped. But we did get rid of the problematic non-basic that was messing us up, and probably messing up the rest of the table too, or setting them up to be stronger than they could be. The only way this hurts someone is if they just didn't have any basics left in their library, and that's just the cost of doing business sometimes. And that sums it up. Again, Magic Presents Pride events are scheduled sometime June 5th through 14th, so check with your LGS for their event schedule and get brewing. And if your LGS has already had its Pride event, or if they're not hosting one, nothing stops you from playing this as a Rule 0 deck, especially during June. Just ask your pod, it's Commander, who cares? Have fun. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic, or becoming a member of this channel on YouTube. And remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.